Hi guys, today we're just going to be reading along to some stories that I found on r/nosleep, and if you like the stories, feel free to subscribe. You can always change your mind and unsubscribe, but I'd be very grateful if you subscribed. So let's just get right into it. Our first story is a story that just kind of sent shivers down my spine more than being like scary. So let's just get into it. My job is to eat shrimp, or what I thought was shrimp. I've always been a creature of habit. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., brew a pot of black coffee strong enough to strip paint, and head out to whatever dead-end job pays the bills. For the past 6 months, that job has been at Oceanic Delicacies, a sprawling warehouse on the outskirts of Port Haven, a foggy coastal town in Maine, where the air always smells like salt and decay. The gig? Quality control tester for shrimp. Yeah, you heard that right. My job is to eat shrimp, or at least what I thought was shrimp. It started innocently enough. I saw the ad on the board, job online. No experience necessary, competitive pay, must have a strong stomach, and no seafood allergies. I figured, why not? I'd been laid off from my last position at a cannery, something about automation replacing human hands, and my savings were dwindling faster than the tide recedes. The interview was a joke, a quick chat with a board HR rep named Marlene, who handed me a form and a pen. Sign here and you're in, she said, her eyes glazed, like she'd repeated the line 1,000 times. The warehouse was massive, a labyrinth of conveyor belts, humming freezers, and the constant clatter of machinery. My station was in a sterile white room at the back, isolated from the main floor. It was called the tasting lab, but it felt more like a clinical exam room. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a metal table with a stool, and a one-way mirror on the wall that I swore someone was always watching from behind. Every day, I'd clock in, don a hairnet and gloves, and wait for the samples. The process was simple. A slot in the wall would open, and a tray would slide out with 10 to 15 shrimp, peeled and deveined, sometimes raw, sometimes cooked in various seasonings. I'd eat them one by one, noting texture, flavor, freshness on the digital tablet. Too salty? Mark it. Rubbery? Flag it. Off-putting aftertaste? Report it. Then the tray would retract, and another would appear. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was monotonous, but the pay was $25 an hour, plus benefits. In Port Haven, that was a king's ransom. At first I loved it. Shrimp had always been a guilty pleasure. Cocktail shrimp at parties, shrimp scampi on date nights back when I had those. The samples were premium, plump, juicy, with that briny snap you only get from fresh catch. I chewed slowly, savoring the burst of ocean flavor, the subtle sweetness beneath the salt. My notes were glowing. Excellent firmness, perfect balance of umami, no fishy undertone. I even started dreaming about shrimp, endless platters floating in a sea of cocktail sauce. But around week 3, things got weird. It started with the textures. One batch fell off, like the meat was too fibrous, almost stringy, as if threads of something tougher were woven in. I noted it. Slightly chewy, possible overprocessing. The next day, another tray came with shrimp that wiggled faintly when I picked them up. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but no, tiny spasms, like they weren't quite dead. Residual nerve activity? ? I typed. My fingers were hesitating. In the cannery days, I'd seen fish twitch post-mortem, but shrimp? They were supposed to be inert. I mentioned it to Marlene during my weekly check-in. She laughed it off, her voice tiny over the intercom. Oh, that's just the new sourcing. We're testing deep-sea varieties, fresher than fresh. Keeps the flavor locked in. I nodded, but a seed of doubt planted itself. Deep-sea shrimp? I'd never heard of such a thing being commercially viable. Port Haven's waters were shallow, battered by storms, not the abyssal depths. As weeks turned to months, the anomalies piled up. Some shrimp had an iridescent sheen like oil on water, shifting colors under the lights, blue to green to purple. Others taste metallic, a coppery tang that lingered on my tongue for hours. I started getting headaches after shifts, pounding migraines that blurred my vision. At home, I'd collapse on my couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling like something was crawling under my skin. One night, after a particularly odd batch, shrimp that popped like caviar when bitten, releasing a vicious fluid. I dreamed vividly. I was underwater, in a vast, dark ocean trance. Bioluminescent shapes darted toward me. Not fish, but elongated things with too many segments. Growing eyes clustered in rows. They pulsed with light, beckoning. I reached out, and one latched onto my hand, its mouth parts unfolding like petals. I woke up gasping, my palm itching, where nothing was there. The next shift, the trace came faster, no breaks between them. I'd barely finished lodging one batch before another slid out. The shrimps were larger now, almost prawn-sized, with veins that pulsed faintly under the translucent flesh. I bit into one, and it squirted, warm, not cold like it should be. The flavor was richer, almost creamy, with an undercurrent of something earthy like soil after rain mixed with blood. I flagged it. Unusual temperature, sample warm upon arrival, flavor profile altered. No response from the intercom. Usually Marlene or someone would chime in with excuses. Silence. My body had started to change. I noticed it in the mirror one morning. My skin looked paler, veins more prominent, especially around my neck and wrists. Bluish lines threading under the surface. I itched constantly, scratching until I bled. The headaches evolved into something worse. Whispers, faint at first, like static in my ears. Words I couldn't make out, bubbling up from somewhere deep. At work, the one-way mirror seemed to fog sometimes, as if breath was on the other side. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the reflection, shadows shifting when I wasn't looking directly. The shrimp, God, the shrimp, started looking different. Not just in texture or taste, but shape. Some had extra ridges along the tail, tiny protrusions like nascent limbs. Others had what looked like ice spots, dark spots that followed me as I lifted them to my mouth. I tried to quit once. Went to Marlene's office after a shift, my tablet clutched and shaking hands. "This isn't right," I said. "The samples, they're not normal shrimp." She smiled, the same glazed expression. "Nonsense, you're our best tester. Top scores every week. Here's a bonus." She slid an envelope across the desk. $500 cash. I took it. Bills don't pay themselves. That night, the itching intensified. In the shower, my forearm raw. I scratched my forearm raw, and something moved beneath the skin. A ripple, like a worm burrowing. I stared, water cascading over me, convinced it was a hallucination, but no. It happened again. A small bulge traveling up my arm, then vanishing. The dreams grew more frequent. Always the trench, the glowing creatures, but now they spoke, not with voices, but impressions, hunger, ancient patience, a promise of belonging. I'd wake with salt crust on my lips, even though I lived miles from the shore. The trays never stopped. I'd eat hundreds a day, my stomach distending painfully, but I never felt full. The shrimp were alive now, unmistakably. They'd curl when touched. Antennae, actual antennae, twitching. Some tried to escape the tray, scudding toward the edge. I'd pin them with a fork, force them down. The taste was exquisite agony, sweet decay, electric vitality surging through me. My notes became erratic. Sample exhibits motility. Recommend halt. Flavor induces euphoria. Potential contaminant. Eyes present. Multiple. Still. Silence from the intercom. I started sneaking samples home, wrapped in napkins, hidden in my lunch bag, under my kitchen light, magnified with a cheap loupe I'd bought online. The truth stared back. They weren't shrimp. Segmented bodies, jointed legs folded tight, mandibles tucked underneath. Larval forms, perhaps, of something much larger. Deep-sea horrors, harvested from trenches no sub should reach. I searched online late at night, Forums about cryptic marine life, leaked documents from oceanographic expeditions, whispers of benthic anomalies caught in trawls off the continental shelf, things that mimic commercial species to infiltrate supply chains, parasites that rewrote hosts from within. The itching spread everywhere. My back, my scalp, between my toes, in the mirror. My eyes had changed, pupils slightly elongated, irises flecked with that same iridescence. One shift, the slot opened, but no tray came. Instead, a voice, finally, from the intercom, not Marlene's, deeper, resonant, like pressure waves in water. You've adapted well. Immigration phase complete. The lights dimmed, the one-way mirror cleared, revealing not an observation room, but darkness, an abyss lit by faint bioluminescence. Shapes moved beyond, massive, segmented, familiar. I looked down at my hands. The skin split painlessly, peeling back like a shell. Beneath, something pale and jointed flexed. Legs? Feelers? The tray arrived then, empty, an invitation. I understood. My job wasn't to test shrimp. It was to become the vessel, to carry them inland, spread the brood. The whispers clarified. We are the tide that returns. You are the bridge. I stepped toward the slot. It widened, accommodating. The air grew cold, briny. As I crossed the threshold into the wet dark beyond the wall, I felt the last of old me slew away. Hunger remained, the eternal patient hunger. Back in the lab, a new stool waited, a new tablet. Soon, another applicant would sign the form. I'm laying on this plate, waiting for them. Our next story is one that I, along with 3,000 other people, found very unnerving, and the ending still has me thinking. I just got a lot of questions. If you ever see a gas station that says last stop for 70 miles, keep driving. I was about 4 miles into a 6-hour drive when I realized I needed a stop. Not just for gas, but because I was falling asleep behind the wheel. My eyes kept drifting shut for half a second at a time. That thing where you blink and you're suddenly 50 feet further down the road than you thought you were. I turned up the music and rolled down the window, but the cold air only helped for a few minutes. I needed caffeine. The highway was empty. I hadn't seen another car in at least 20 minutes. When I saw the glow of a gas station sign up ahead, I felt relieved. It was one of those old, independent places, not a chain. The kind that looks like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. A single building with 2 pumps out front and a hand-painted sign that said, last stop for 70 miles. I pulled in and parked at the pump. The lot was empty except for a beat-up truck parked around the side of the building. I figured it belonged to whoever was working the night shift. I got out, stretched my legs, and filled up my tank. I paid at the pump and headed inside. I should have just gotten back in my car and left, but instead I needed that coffee, and I needed to use the restroom, so I walked inside. The store was small, a few aisles of snacks and car supplies, a coffee station in the back corner with those glass pots that had probably been sitting on the burner for hours, a cooler full of sodas and energy drinks along the back wall. The lights were that harsh fluorescent kind that made everything look slightly off. The attendant was behind the counter. He was maybe 50, with thinning gray hair and a face that looked like it hadn't slept in days. He had the TV on, some late-night infomercial, with the sound turned low. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his expression changed, just for a second, like he was surprised to see me, or worried. "Evening," he said. "Hey, just grabbing a coffee." I walked to the back and poured myself a cup. It was burnt and bitter, but I didn't care. I just needed the caffeine to get me through the next 2 hours. I grabbed a candy bar too, and brought everything to the counter. The attendant rang me up slowly. He kept glancing past me toward the windows, toward my car. "Driving alone?" he asked. "Yeah." "Long trip?" "Few more hours." He nodded, but didn't say anything else. He was staring at that window again. I turned to look, but there was nothing out there, just at my car pump. The empty highway beyond. Something wrong? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, then he slid a piece of paper across the counter, a napkin. He had written on it in pen, "You're being followed. Don't go back to your car." I stared at the napkin, then I looked back up at him. His face was completely serious. "What are you talking about?" He held up a hand. "Keep your voice down. Look at the monitor." He pointed to a small security screen mounted on the wall behind the counter. It showed a black and white feed of the parking lot. My car was there, and someone was standing next to it. My stomach dropped. The figure was on the passenger side, just standing there facing the store. I couldn't make out any features. They were wearing dark clothes, and their face was in shadow. I spun around and looked out the window. There was no one there, just my car, empty lot, nothing. I looked back at the monitor. The figure was still there, standing in the same spot. "What the hell?" I whispered. "It doesn't show up when you look at it directly," the attendant said, "only on the cameras. I don't know why, I don't know what that is, but I know what happens to the people who go out there when it's waiting for them." My heart was pounding. I looked out the window again. Nothing. Back at the monitor, the figure had moved. It was closer to the front of my car, still facing the store. "This is insane," I said. "This has to be some kind of trick." "I wish it was." He reached under the counter and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed news articles. Missing person reports. Headlines about bodies found on the highway. 4 people in the last 8 months, he said. All of them stopped here late at night. All of them went back to their cars even after I warned them. They found them a few miles down the road. Cars stopped in the middle of the highway. Engines still running. Drivers still in their seats. Eyes open. No marks on them. Coroner said their hearts just stopped. It felt dizzy. This couldn't be real. I looked at the articles, the photos of the victims, a young woman, a middle-aged man, a couple in their 30s. Real people, real deaths. Why haven't the police done anything? I asked. Done what? There's nothing to investigate. No signs of foul play. No witnesses. Just people dying on a lonely stretch of highway. Happens all the time. They chalk it up to fatigue or medical emergencies. I looked at the monitor again. The figure was even closer now, standing right in front of my car. How long does it stay? I asked. Until sunrise usually, sometimes longer. But if you stay inside, you're safe. It can't come in here. Why not? He shrugged. I don't know. I stopped asking questions like that months ago. I just know the rules. Stay inside when it's dark. Don't go out to the lot. Wait for daylight. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, but I couldn't explain the figure on the monitor. I couldn't explain why it wasn't there when I looked with my own eyes. Okay, I said. I'll wait. He looked relieved. Good. Smart. You can sit in the back if you want. There's a couch. I've got some magazines. It's only about 4 hours until sunrise. He walked to the front door and locked it. The click of the deadbolt was loud in the quiet store. Just in case, he said. Sometimes people panic and try to run. This way, you won't do anything stupid. Something about the way he said it made me uncomfortable, but I told myself he was just being cautious. He was trying to help. I sat down on the stool near the counter. The attendant went back to watching his infomercial. Every few minutes, I would look at the monitor. The figure was always there. Sometimes in a different position, sometimes closer to the building, but always there. After about an hour, I asked if I could use the bathroom. He pointed to a door near the back of the store, right through there. I got up and walked towards it. As I passed the counter, I glanced at the security monitor again. Something was different. It took me a second to realize what it was. The timestamp. The footage showed 11:47 p.m., but it was after 3 a.m. now. I had checked my phone when I first came inside. It was definitely past 2. I stopped walking. I looked at the monitor more carefully. The footage wasn't live, it was a loop. The same few minutes playing over and over. My blood went cold. I looked out the window at my car, really looked this time. There was no one out there. There had never been anyone out there. I kept my voice calm. Hey, what time does that camera say? He didn't answer for a second. When I turned around, he was standing right behind me. You should use the bathroom, he said. His voice was different now, flatter. You've been holding it in for a while. The timestamp is wrong, I said. The footage is old. His expression didn't change. He just stared at me with those tired eyes. You saw the articles, he said. You saw what happens to people on this highway. Those could be from anywhere. Anyone could print those out. He took a step toward me. I took a step back. You should stay, he said. It's not safe out there. I looked at the door, locked. The deadbolt needed a key from this side. Where's the key? I asked. I can't let you leave, not until morning, for your own safety. I backed up further. My hand found the door handle to the back room. I pushed it open and stepped through. It wasn't a break room. It was a storage space, dim light from a single bulb. Shelves lined the walls, and on the shelves were boxes, dozens of them, each one labeled with the date. I opened the nearest one. Inside was a wallet, a phone with a cracked screen, a set of car keys, a driver's license. The photo showed a young woman, blonde hair, smiling. I recognized her face from the articles. I opened another box, different items, different license, the middle-aged man. He hadn't been warning those people, he had been taking them. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. He was standing in the doorway, blocking the exit. They always figured it out, he said, but by then, it's too late. No cell signal out here. Nearest town is in 40 miles. No one to hear you scream. He was holding something, a length of cord. I backed into the shelves. My hand closed around something heavy, a wrench, old and rusted, but solid. You don't want to do this, he said. It'll be easier if you just cooperate. He stepped forward. I swung. The wrench connected with the side of his head. He staggered sideways and hit the wall. I didn't wait to see if he went down. I ran past him through the doorway into the main store. The front door was still locked. I grabbed the stool from the counter and swung it at the glass window. It cracked, but it didn't break. I swung again. I could hear him behind me getting up, cursing. The third swing went through. I knocked out the remaining glass with the stool and climbed through the window frame. Shards cut my arms and legs, but I didn't care. I dropped onto the pavement outside and ran for my car. My keys were still in my pocket. My phone still in the cup holder where I left it. I got in and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw him stumbling out through the broken window. I floored it. I drove for an hour without stopping. When I finally pulled over at a rest stop, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I'm sitting in my car now, doors locked, engine running. I called 911. They're sending someone to the gas station. They told me to stay where I am and wait for an officer to come take my statement. I keep checking my mirrors. I keep expecting to see headlights behind me. The sun is coming up now. I can see the sky turning gray on the horizon. I should feel relieved, but I don't. Because when I passed through that window, when I ran to my car and looked back at the store, I saw the security monitor through the broken glass. The figure was still on the screen, standing in the lot, but it wasn't by my car anymore. It was standing exactly where I had been standing when I broke the window. I don't know what he had been playing on that monitor. I don't know if it was really a loop or something else entirely. I don't know if he made it all up to scare people into staying, or if there was some truth buried under the lies. All I know is that I'm never driving this highway again. And if you ever see a gas station sign that says, "Last stop for 70 miles, keep driving." Whatever's waiting there, you don't want to find out. And lastly, but not least, our next story is one that just seems so unlikely to happen, but I mean, all of these stories could hypothetically be real, right? So let's get into it. Another building vanished. It happened again. Another building went missing in the middle of the night. One minute it's there, the next it's just gone. Last night, it was my buddy's daughter who went missing along with her entire apartment building. They'd come over that very day to shoot the shit over a couple of beers. She had asked about apartment 426, and since it happened so close to her, I told her everything I knew about it. Understandably, I knew what I told her really freaked her out. I tried to change the subject, but she and her dad left not long after. That very night, while I was getting ready for bed, my old police chief called me. He knew I was close with her dad, so he'd figured he'd call me and let me know what happened. He asked if I wanted to be a part of the search, and I agreed. I was there when they interviewed the neighbors in the surrounding area. They all reported the same thing. A dense fog rolled in, and the ground shook violently, like the most violent earthquake they'd ever felt, followed by a deafening horn, like that of a train, then nothing. Everything went back to normal, and the world felt silent again. Except, once more, an entire building had gone missing in mere moments. Everyone inside it is disappearing with it. So we began a search, in much the same way as when Building 426 went missing. This time, it wasn't long before something was found. 2 hikers had called and reported seeing a building deep in the woods, just off an established trail. So we went looking, and we found it. There it was, its address on full display, apartment 451. Only around 100 kilometers away from where it had stood. It had been a 10-story building, although only the first 2 floors were currently there. I was one of the first to go in, and the second I did, I could tell something was wrong. I mean, nothing so far had given me any doubt as to what I was doing. It had all been so procedural. But the moment I stepped in there, the hair on my arm stood on end. Something about the place was completely off. Something more than I was seeing. It was like every nerve in my body was telling me to get out. The first thing that hit me was the smell, like hot copper. The air was thick and heavy, almost kind of muggy, hot, and humid, despite it being midwinter and snow covered every inch outside. The floor plan was all wrong. I mean, doorways leading to nothing but brick walls, and hallways that just ended abruptly. Trees were going through the walls and ceiling like they just phased through everything. I opened one of the doors and it led outside, despite being a normal room door with a number. There was an elk there standing still, completely frozen. It had this look of pure terror on his face, but it wasn't looking at me. It was looking past me, like it could see something behind me, something I couldn't see. Another officer called out to me, and in the brief moment when I looked away, the elk disappeared. I don't just mean walked away. The tracks walked up to the doorframe and ended there. I didn't know what to make of it. I mean, everything here was impossible. So why was it that human air and an elk were the only things I could think about? As if those things were what reaffirmed the inconsistencies I knew were there. Everything went to shit after I went to the second floor. I wish I hadn't gone up. I really wish I hadn't. When I went up, it had no roof and the walls ended slightly above my head. I heard crows above me and I looked up into the trees that had gone through the building. God, they were all up there, over 100 of them, up in branches, writhing and moaning in pain. Every tenant of apartment 451 was up there, alive, suffering. Some looked as though their skin had been peeled from their flesh. Most of them were missing limbs and pieces of their bodies, all ending in straight edges, as though they'd been cut off in one straight motion. I saw her up there too, what was left of her. She'd been cut cleanly in half, just above the hips, and her guts dangled down. Crows were pecking at them. I called her name. She turned her eyes to meet mine as she mouthed for me to help her. I took a step back, and my foot sank into something soft. I looked down to see a man half sunken in the floorboards. His skin was translucent. It reminded me of the other we found encased in stone. He screamed and they joined him, screaming in deafening unison. It got foggy out of nowhere. It just appeared, and in seconds, I couldn't see 5 feet in front of me. That's when the building began to shake violently. It nearly threw me to the ground, but I caught myself. I knew what it all meant, so I headed for the exit as fast as I could. I called out to the others to hurry and get out. As I exited behind me, one of my coworkers, my foot snagged on the doorframe. I fell hard, knocking the wind straight out of me, but the worst part was at the blaring horn. It felt like someone was holding a train horn right next to my ear. I held my hands up to my ears, but just as soon as it started, it fell silent again. When I rolled over onto my back, the building had vanished once more, and my foot that had caught in the doorframe, well, it was just gone. It didn't bleed, it didn't hurt. My leg just ended in a straight edge right above my ankle. I looked around and noticed that only the officer who'd exited before me remained. The other 3 hadn't made it out in time. I knew them well. They had families. They'd been good men, and they didn't deserve to never see their children grow up, never to grow old and look back at all they'd accomplished. They took me to the hospital, and they couldn't explain it any more than we could. And it wasn't cauterized. It was just an open wound, yet it didn't bleed. I found her post. I'm writing this in her honor. She was right. People need to know apartment 451 wasn't the first, and I doubt it will be the last.